Hi everyone, welcome to Vibe Fashion's YouTube channel. Today we'll be learning how to make a shoulder princess dart bustier. I'll be using this Ankara fabric with this lace fabric to achieve this shoulder princess dart. Okay, to begin, the measurements needed are the shoulder measurement here is 15, the bust measurement is 40, the under bust measurement, that's the round under bust, is 34, the round waist is 34, that's the upper waist, which is the high waist where we call our half length, is 34. The shoulder to nipple point, that's what I labeled NP, is 10.5. The shoulder to under bust, that's under bust point, is 13.5. And then the half length is 16 inches. So basically, these are the measurements we need to achieve our shoulder princess dart. So to begin, I'll be using the biggest part of my measurement, which is 40, to determine the amount of fabric to fold. So I'll be dividing this 40 by 4. So this 40 divided by 4, of course, that's 10 inches. So 10 inches plus my dart allowances. So I'll be adding 4 inches to this measurement. So I'll be folding 14 inches. I will be placing 14 inches on fold. So we'll get right into it. So the materials I need will be my armhole curve and then my pattern master for my ruler. Okay, so I've placed my fabric on fold already, and I have 14 inches. I have even above that, but that's okay. That's 14.5. Okay, so I'll be drawing my starting line, which is where all my measurements will start from, and this is also the shoulder line. Okay, so I'm going to mark 3 inches on this line and then mark 8 inches. This is to create my shoulder slant. I'll come down by 1 inch at this 8 inches and then slant it towards this 3 inches. Okay, so having done that, I'm going to enter my point. That's the vertical measurement. The shoulder to bust point is 10.5. So I'll confirm that same 10.5 here so that I have a straight line. Shoulder to under bust is 13.5. So here is my 13.5. And the half length is 16. So I'll be adding half inch here to join the peplum I'll be using for this blouse. So I'm confirming my 16.5 here also. So now I have my waistline, which is the half length line, the under bust, and then the bust point line. Okay, so I have my lines marked out. So on this part, I'll come here to enter my armhole measurement. The armhole for this person is 8 inches. So I'm placing my tape beneath the shoulder slant. So this is my 8 inches here. Then I'll come back here to confirm the same 8 inches here, because this person's shoulder is 15. 15 divided by 2, that's 7.5 plus half inch. So that's why I have 8 here. So I'm bringing the same 8 inches here. So this is to achieve a straight line that will come down from the shoulder. As usual, if you have been watching my videos, you'll notice that I always do this so that you can make sure that your lines are straight. Okay, so now that I have my armhole line, okay, I'll come here and get the midpoint of the armhole line, which is going to be 4 because the armhole is 8. So here I have my 4 inches. I'll come in by 3/4 of an inch because this is my front piece. So I'll come in by 3/4 of an inch. I'll slant it back to the beginning, that's to this tip here. And then I'll bring in my armhole curve to create my curve, or to curve my armhole. So now that we have our armhole curved out, so I'm going to enter the nipple to nipple measurement. The nipple to nipple measurement for this person is 4 inches. That's nipple to nipple. The distance from one nipple to the other is 8 inches. Now, of course, my fabric is on fold, so I'm going to be entering 4 inches because I'll divide it by 2, considering that my fabric is on fold. So that's 4 plus half inch. So I'm marking at 4.5. So I'll come here too on the under bust point line and bring down this same 4.5, and I'll still do the same thing on the waistline, bring down the 4.5. So I'm going to rule a straight line now. So now I have my 4.5. Okay, so I'll come here to the waistline. I'll take out half inch from this side and then half inch from this side also. So you can see I've taken a half inch from the underbust and at the half length, that's the waist point. So now that I have this half inch, I'm going to connect them like this. So now that I've done this, the next thing to do is to bring in my curve. I'll come down by half inch from this bust point line, by half inch from this point line, and then I'll place my curve like this to achieve the curve at this side. So you can see it's stopping at the half, that's half inch below the bust point. Okay, so I'll come to this side now. So before I can achieve that will be on this side, I'm going to enter the bust measurement. The bust measurement divided by 4, that's 10. So I have my 10 inches here. The under bust measurement divided by 4, 34 divided by 4 will give me 8.5. So I have my 8.5. So now that I have 8.5 and I have 10 inches here, so to determine the dart intake I'll be doing on the side is this difference between the bust and the under bust. So, and in this case, it's 1.5. So I'll be placing 1.5 on this side. Can you see I'm placing my tape after the line, that's the dart line. So I'm placing my 1.5 here, and then I'm doing the same thing on the half length, that's on the waistline here. So now I have my 1.5 here. So I use the difference between the bust and the under bust to determine this dart. So here I've drawn my straight line. So I want to connect it to the bust point. Remember I came down by half inch on this point. So I'll place my curve like this and then connect it. I hope it's clear. And then connect it. So this is what I have. So I've created my darts for this, the underbust and the waistline here. So now we're coming, remember that I said we're making a shoulder princess dart. Okay, so I'll come here. The neck width I'm going to be using a neck width of 3.5. So here is my 3.5. So I'll mark that 3.5, and I'm also going to be using a round neckline. So, and the depth of this neckline I'm making, okay, let me just mark my 3.5 before we determine the kind of neckline I want to use. So I'm just going to use the same 3.5 by 3.5 before I'll decide how deep I want this neckline to be. So now that we have this, so now to determine our shoulder princess dart, now after my neckline, I'm going to get the remaining part of the shoulder line. So right now, placing my tape away from the neckline, I have 4.5. So now that I have 4.5 on this line, I'm going to get the midpoint of this 4.5 I have here by folding my tape like this. So now that I have my line marked out, so this is the midpoint here. So I'll draw a line from here to connect to the bust point. So I've done this. So I'm going to take my dart on both sides. I'm going to be taking half inch on the left and then half inch on the right. So I'm marking my half inch on both sides. So having marked my half inch on both sides, I'll bring it now and connect it to the same bust point. So you can see I've taken my dart on the shoulder. So of course, by taking this dart on the shoulder, it means I'm going to have a shortage, because once you see a dart, it means it's going to be cut out. So I'm going to replace back this 1 inch that I took away from here. So can you see it's 1 inch here? So I'm going to be replacing it on this slant now. So I'm replacing back that 1 inch that I'm going to be cutting out. Remember that I will join the both sides, that's this left side, the side piece and the center piece, with half inch on both sides. So I'll still come back here and replace that 1 inch. Let me repeat that. By the time I cut out this dart, I'm going to lose 1 inch. So that 1 inch is what I replaced first. That is it here. So I've replaced that 1 inch here. So, and I'm still going to use half inch on both sides to join them together when I'm sewing. So by the time I'm sewing them together, I'm still going to lose another 1 inch. So I've come back here to replace the same 1 inch. So you can see that my shoulder slant, the slant has extended all the way to this. So that means I've added 2 inches to my shoulder, because I'll be losing 2 inches when I am done. Okay, so here I'll come to this point now, this midpoint, which is the midpoint of the armhole. I'll check what is the amount of the dart intake here. I've lost 3/4 of an inch here at the midpoint. So I'll have to replace back that same 3/4 of an inch, so which is bringing me back to the actual straight line here. So it has brought me back here. So that's that 3/4 of an inch. Then I'll go ahead to still add 1 inch because I'll be joining them together with the same half inch on both sides. So I add that half 1 inch here. So can you see I've replaced back the same 1 inch on this point. So here you can see that I've taken almost nothing. This is like, it's less than half inch as it is coming downwards here. So this is like 1/4 of an inch. So I'll just bring out the same 1/4 of an inch, and then I'll use the same 1 inch to join it back. So now this is it. So now to create my armhole, the new armhole I'm working with. So can you see what we have? And then we'll connect it to this part here. So now this is my new armhole. Let me use this part of my curl so that it comes out well. Okay, so now this is my new armhole. This armhole is gone because of all this dart intake. So I now have my new armhole here. So now we'll come down to the bust. The bust is divided by 4. We have 10 plus 2 inches for our sewing allowance. So I'll add my 2 inches for sewing allowance. So then here, remember that like the under bust measurement, we also took our dart from here. So here I have 2 inches. I've taken away 2 inches from here. So you're going to place that 8.5 because the under bust is 34 inches. When you divide it by 4, you have your 8.5. So here is your 8.5. You replace back the dart of 2 inches that you have taken here. You come back here and replace it, and then you add your 2 inches for your sewing allowance. So the same thing, the under bust and the waist measurement are the same. That's 34 inches. So I'll bring down that same 8.5, add my 2 inches that intake, and then my 2 inches for sewing allowance. So in a case where the waist, that's the half length, is not the same as the under bust, you enter the waist measurement and then add your 2 inches. What am I saying? It's ratio. Let's say this under bust was 36 inches. When you divide it by 4, it will give you 9. 9 plus your 2 inches that intake will give you 11, plus your normal sewing allowance of 2 inches. So it will give you 11.5. So it will give you 11. That's 9 plus 2. That's 11 plus your 2 inches. That's 13. Sorry, please. Okay. So we'll be connecting these lines like this. So if you want to, because remember that we have entered our nipple to nipple measurement here, nipple to nipple measurement of 4, and we added half inch. So we have our sewing allowance at this side. If you want to finish and have exactly 2 inches as your sewing allowance left, then you need to add the half inch for joining this side also. So you can come here and place that half inch. So automatically that means you have added 2.5-inch sewing allowance. You can always trim out your excess when you are done. It is always better to have more than to have less. Some fabrics shrink, they shrink, so you don't want to finish and then you are looking for your sewing allowance. Okay, so now that I've done this, I'll come here to the side because this, we know that our front length and our back length are not the same. For this person, her front length is 16 and her back length is 15 inches. Remember that I use 16.5. This is plus half inch for my joining allowance of my peplum that will be added to this blouse. So, and if her back length is 15 inches, remember that we're going to be joining the sides of the back together. So I need to take away that bust, that difference that the bust has given us, which is 1 inch. So I'll come here to the side here and take it away. So I'll be placing it on this point. This is my sewing allowance from here. From here is my sewing allowance. These are my actual measurement. So I'll come here and place my 1 inch from here, from the actual measurement, so that here will be straight. This part that is my sewing allowance will be straight. So I'll slant this towards the dart leg here. I'm going to be slanting this towards the dart leg here. So this is what we have. So I've slanted it towards that leg. So I've removed the bust dart, which is going to give me a difference between the front and back. So once you do this, your blouse will balance because the back is shorter than the front. So by the time you have reduced that length here, it will give you what you are looking for. If we were drafting on a pattern paper, we would have closed the bust dart, but this is me still taking away the bust dart. So that's that for our front piece. So the next thing to do now is to go ahead and cut it out. Like I earlier said, that the neckline, we're going to make it deeper than this. This is not what we are going to be using. So the remaining thing to do is to add 1/2 inch for joining our shoulders together. So I'll come here on the shoulder slant and go up by 1/2 inch. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my scissors and cut. So I'll be cutting all these parts that have my dart. Okay, okay, so having done that, I'm going to cut on this slanted line. So I'm cutting here at this point, and then I'm cutting on the new armhole. So I'm going to cut on this slant. Okay, so now that we have our front pieces together, I'm going to place it. Let me cut out this part too. So now that we have our front pieces together, can you see that placing them together like so? This is what I have my 9 inches. So I'll cut out this pointy part. So we're looking for 9 inches so that by the time we join them together, that's 1/2 inch on both sides to leave us with 8 inches, and the remaining 1/2 inch will be for joining our sleeve. So this is what I was talking about. Okay, so the next thing to do is to place our back piece and cut it out. So the difference between our back and the front is that the back is going to have our zip allowance. So that zip allowance is going to be a zip allowance of 1.5. So 1.5 plus the 10, that's the bust, because I'm using the bust to place my fabric on fold. 1.5 plus 10, that's 11.5, plus 2 inches sewing allowance, that's 13.5. So I'll be placing 13.5 on fold. So I've marked out my zip allowance for my back, which is 1.5, as you can see. So I have my 1.5. So this is my zip allowance. And then the back half length is 15. Here I use 15.5. Remember that I added 1/2 inch in front. I had 16 and I added 1/2 inch and made it 16.5 because of the joining of our peplon. So that's the same case here. So I have 15.5 for my back half length. So I'm coming here now, placing my tape after the zip allowance. So I'm marking 3 inches and then the same 8 inches. This is to also create the shoulder slant for the back. So I'll come down by 1 inch. So, okay. So now that I have my 1 inch, so I'll create mark the armhole. The armhole measurement for this bust 40 is 8 inches. How did I come about this 8 inches? You're going to divide the bust by 6 plus 1.5. So that's how I came about my 8 inches. So I'm bringing down the same 8 inches that I have on the shoulder line there. This is to create a straight line. So here we are. So now I have my chest line in front, at the back, sorry, the chest line at the back, which is the armhole line, and then this is the waist line. Okay. So now for my back armhole, I'll get the midpoint of my back armhole. I'm also going to eliminate bulge. The midpoint is 4 inches. For the back, we'll go in by 1/2 inch. Remember, the front we went in by 3/4 inch. So I'm going to slant this 1/2 inch back to the shoulder line like so, and then I'll bring in my curve and create the curve that the armhole is supposed to have. So you can come here, you just place your tape, go up by 1 inch from this point so that you can place your curve correctly. So I have my back armhole curved out already. So I'm going to place the bust measurement on the chest line. Remember, we don't have a bust point at the back, so I'm placing my bust measurement on the chest line. The bust divided by 4, that's 10 inches, plus my 2 inches for sewing allowance. So here is my 2 inches for sewing allowance. Then here we'll enter the waist measurement. The waist divided by 4 is 34. That's 34 divided by 4, that's 8.5, plus 2 inches for sewing allowance, and then 1 inch for that. So this is what I have here. So I'm going to be connecting my lines like so. So I added 1 inch for my back that, because my back is just a basic body length, is 4 inches plus half. So I'm going to be marking that same 4.5 here. You can see I'm placing my tape from the center back, that's away from my zip allowance. So I'm marking my 4.5 here. So I'll bring that 4.5 up to the chest line. So I'm just going to draw out my chest line, as this is the armhole line, which is also the chest line. So I'll mark that same 4.5 here. So I'm going to connect it like this. So then I'll take my dart, half inch on both sides. Remember, I added 1 inch for that. So that's half inch on both sides, which will give me my 1 inch. So I'm going to be connecting this dart to the chest line. So I'm zeroizing half inch below the chest line. You can see I zeroized here. So this is my half inch dart on both sides. So that's that for our dart. So I'll come here to the zip allowance. If you notice, as human beings, at the spinal cord, it's more inward. You don't want to have bulge. You don't want to have your zip bulging at that side. So I'll be removing half inch from this zip allowance. So I'm removing half inch from my zip allowance. Then I'll slant it all the way to the neckline. This is to enable the back to be flat and neat. Let it just lay flat on the person's back. You don't want the zip bending and bulging at the back. So I've removed this half inch. So that means I've left with 1 inch for my zip allowance. So remember that I'll be using a lining. I'll be cutting lining for this dress. I'll be using half inch to turn my lining. So by the time I use half inch to turn my lining, I'll be left with half inch. So does it mean that my zip allowance is going to be half inch? No, it's going to still be the same 1 inch. I added, let me repeat this part for clarity. I added 1.5 inch for my zip allowance, and I've taken away half inch from the waistline. I slanted it all the way to the neckline. Now, I'm going to be using lining to turn the back of this clothes. I'm going to use lining to turn this part. So by the time I sew my lining on half inch, I'm going to just be left with half inch. So to be able to have that 1 inch which I need for my zip allowance, it means it will come into the actual measurement to eliminate bulge. So by the time I take half inch from here, so my zip allowance will come in here. So can you see, it's going to take extra half inch from the actual measurement. So this will help to eliminate bulge from the back, because the same thing will happen here. Here I still have my 1.5, almost 1.5 here. So by the time I turn it with half inch here, I'm going to be left with 1 inch, which is what I'm looking for my zip allowance. But here, when I turn with half inch, I won't be left with up to 1 inch. So meaning the only way we can get 1 inch is by going into the actual measurement. I hope that makes sense. So I'll be cutting out this part, which is for the bulge. So this is me cutting my back piece out. So I'm cutting out this half inch for the bulge to eliminate bulge from the back of our dress or our blouse. Okay, so I'll cut out my back piece like this. Then the armhole. So now that I have my back piece, I'll be adding half inch here also for joining my shoulder together for the back and front. So I've added it here. So this is what my back piece look like. So I will notch this part to indicate that this is where my dart is. So what is left is our neckline. So I'm going to bring the front and the back together, and then I'll show us how to mark our neckline. I have my front pieces together. I'm going to be using a V neckline, not really a sharp V, but like a curvy V. I'm going to show us. So this is what I want to show us. This is my back side piece. Remember that we'll be sewing them together. That's the back side piece and the front side piece. Can you see that they are matching up at the sides here? So this is why I'm saying it's very important. So can you see the curve that we'll have in front, which is the normal curves that women have in front at the side here. So these are the, so this is the back side piece and this is the front side piece. So I'll talk inches. And I'll be using a neck depth of 6 inches. So the neckline is going to be like this. So you can see how I'm using my curve. So I'm not making it that sharp V. That's why I'm not using a straight ruler. So I bring in my scissors and then I'll cut. Okay, so this is my neckline for the front. So for the back, it's going to be the same neck width, of course, and then the neck depth is going to be 4 inches for the back. So I'm placing my tape away from my zip allowance, so you can see where it's starting from the center back, and then I'm going down by 4 inches. So I'm going to have a round neck at the back. I'm just going to place my curve this way to achieve the neckline I want. So here is my back neckline. So that's that for the front and the back. So the next thing to do is just to place my lace fabric. Remember I said I'll be using it to just beautify it, to cover it up. So I'm cutting out exactly the same thing. Before I'll go ahead to add my pad, and then I'll show us how to join the bustier. Okay, I'm done cutting out my lace pieces, and I've also top stitched it to my fabric. I've also cut out my lining. So to cut out our pad now, I'll notch the underbust point, and then I'll come down by 6.5 inches from the shoulder line and notch it, because that's where my pad will be starting from. So I'll be using this paper to cut out patterns for the breast pad. Okay, so I'll cut out these pieces and then I'll place it on fold. As you can see, I'm folding down the part, the 6.5 inches where the pad will be starting from. So after cutting it out, then I'll fold the pattern I have into two, and then at the center front I'll go up by 1 inch. This is to give it that curve that women have under their bust. Okay, so can you see the curve? And then I'll place my side piece. I'll notch the underbust point too, and also come down by 6.5 inches and notch it, and then cut out the curved shape I have at the side piece. Then after doing that, I'm going to notch the bust point like you see me doing. I'll notch the bust point. Then from this bust point, I'm going to mark 4.5 inches, which is the nipple to nipple measurement, half of the nipple to nipple measurement, which is 4 inches plus half inch. So I'm going to curve it to the upper bust, and then I'll curve it down to the under bust. Then I'll go ahead to cut it out. So I'll place this on my wording or my pad, whichever one you call it. I'll place it on it and cut out the pieces the pad I'm going to be ironing to the bustier. So after doing this, you want to just quietly pin it or carefully pin it to your bustier and then iron it. Remember that this part has the fusible part that can be ironed to your fabric and it sticks to it. So I'm just going to cut it out, and then I'll place it on the fusible part, that's the part with the gum, and then I'll place it on my fabric and iron it to stick to it. So before taking it to my sewing machine, and then I'll go ahead to sew on half inch. That's join the bustier by half inch on both sides. Remember that I added half inch for my sewing allowance. So that will be my seam, a half inch will be my seam allowance. So you want to be careful when you are doing this. Okay, so I've cutting out the second piece of my pad, as you can see me doing. So this is what I'm talking about. So you trim out all your excesses. You want to have exactly the same shape as the pattern you have. So I'm pinning it to the underbust point like I earlier said. So you see what I have. I'm also going to do the same thing to the other side. I'll pin it, and then I'll pin the center piece also, making sure that it starts from the underbust point, because those underbust points must meet. You don't want to join your pad or your bustier and then the one underbust point is beneath the other. It will give you a wrong shape. You don't want to have that kind of problems. So you just need to be careful when you are doing this. Okay, so I've gone ahead to join it on 1/2 inch, as you can see. So this is before ironing. Can you see that I sewed on 1/2 inch and my points are matching? So I'm notching the underbust point. This is to help it relax so that I can iron it well. So I'm going to be ironing my seam line opened. So you want to be careful to do this, and you want to use steam iron to do this. So in the case where you don't have steam iron, please sprinkle water so that it will just help it to relax more. So after pressing this open, you want to make sure that you are placing it on holding your pad well, or you are pulling it well so that you iron well on the bust ham. You don't want any of this part to be dented. So I'm cutting out my paper stay that I'll use to cover up the seam line. This is to keep it open. The paper stay has gum also on it. So I'm placing the part with the gum to face the pad, or to face the wording. So this is to help hold it down. So once you have placed this, just be rest assured that your seam line stays open inside the outfit, because that's the wrong side of the outfit. So you want to also iron the front, which is what I'm doing right now. So do this. So if you have stuck with me to this point, or if you have watched this video to this point, please kindly subscribe, like, share, comment. Okay, so now you can see what we have on this side. So this is the final outcome of our pad. You can see what it is. So princess princess shoulder bust here is out, and you see how beautiful it's looking. So I'm going to be showing us the final outcome of this dress after joining it. Thanks for watching. Bye, and see you in my next one.